They may torture my body, break my bones, even kill me. Then they will have my dead body, not my obedience. Not my obedience.
Broadcasting from Brisbane, Australia, this is The FOMO Show.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And this is a podcast where you'll hear about blockchain, cryptocurrency, and future tech in relatively plain English.
We'll help you stay across the crypto world so you don't get the fear of missing out.
You can find us at FOMO.show or by searching for The FOMO Show on your podcast platform of choice or alternatively on YouTube.
So this week we're going to be talking about Enterprise Blockchain. What's going on there? What's happening? We're going to give you an update on that as well as a bit of news.
Yeah, so we're going to cover the launch of Coinbase's venture fund, the new anti-money laundering laws in Australia, what Russia's doing with Ethereum, which is quite interesting as well, and a fair bit of other news that we'll discuss when the time comes.
So what have you been up to this week?
Yeah, we went to a Ethereum meetup last week, and it was more around the engineering side of Ethereum than anything about the price or whatever. And it's essentially an event that's being run by Consenys and ThoughtWorks.
Who are Consenys? Because for those who don't know, who are Consenys?
Yeah, so Consenys are essentially a worldwide organization, deal predominantly with Ethereum, but they've got a very interesting model, which I think they call holacracy, which is essentially about having it's kind of like a decentralized version of an organization, a little bit similar to decentralized autonomous organizations, but they can vote on different things. There's different portions to the business, but there's no real figurehead or a leader. It's operated a lot more on like a flat scale than most top-down organizations, and they're involved with a bunch of different Ethereum projects. They work quite closely with the Ethereum Foundation and also the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance.
Wow.
So they're a big deal. I think they've got about 600 to 700 employees, and they seem to be adding like 10 to 20 new employees every week at the moment.
So they're working on the platform, they're consulting for businesses. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
they seem to have their fingers in a lot of different pies, which is pretty cool. So they've been running this engineering event to essentially help software engineers and other interested parties that are looking to get into the space to educate themselves on Ethereum and what the platform does. And their goal is to have a bunch of new developers by the end of the year that either would want to work with Consenys or will be able to be hired by Consenys or by someone else, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
So what have you been up to, mate?
Oh, just a bit of this and that, really. I've had a spot of gaming this week, being able to jump onto Battlefield 4, fly some helicopters around. What else? Just been exploring the countryside around Brisbane. Beautiful area. So, if you're in this part of the world, hit us up for some suggestions on places to go.
And we take crypto here now too, in a lot of our stores. So, with Travel by Bit. Fantastic. Joe, is this investment legal or financial advice?
In a word, no. New cryptocurrencies seem to be popping up every day, and it's hard to know which ones are legitimate and which aren't. We're not saying you should buy anything at all.
Full disclosure, we're personally both invested in different cryptocurrencies, some of which we talk about on the show. But if we talk about a project, it doesn't mean you should buy it. So do your research, never invest more than you can afford to lose, and avoid the fear of missing out. If you're new around here and new to crypto, check out our Blockchain Basics series. It starts from episode 2 and continues until episode 8. It'll give you some grounding in the fundamentals and help you understand what on earth we're talking about. And all of our Blockchain Basics segments are we've got timestamps in the show notes. So if you don't want to listen through the full episodes, you can just normally in your podcast app of choice, like if you're using Podcast Addict on Android, you can normally click on the timestamp and it will take you to the specific starting point. So you don't have to trawl through every single part of every episode to find it.
Thanks to all our regular listeners for tuning in, and hello to our new YouTube subscribers. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Absolute pleasure having you here.
Yeah, we just want to do a special shout out to MC Robbo or McRobbo.
Is it McRobbo? Yeah.
You can just tell us in Slack how we actually pronounce it. But you dropped us a note back in March, and McRowe said he's been catching up with our podcast as he renovates the bathroom, which was awesome. We actually got a real kick out of that.
Yeah. Thank you for your message, man.
Yeah. Like, it does mean a lot to us, And if you're like that and you're listening to our podcast while doing something, or if it means something to you, please, feel free to drop us a note. We'd love to hear it, and we'd love to shout you out on the show too.
So, what are you doing while you're listening to our podcast? We'd love to hear from you.
Jump on our Slack.
Yes, be Slack. Stop doing what you're doing.
That's right.
If you'd like to be a part of the show, why not send us a voice recording? If it's under a minute long and in an MP3 or WAV file, we'll try our best to fit you in the show. Whether you're sharing news, a couple facts about an industry, or just an interesting tidbit or observation, do just send us a recording. You can email it to us at fomoshow@protonmail.com.
Cool.
So, what's been going on in the news last couple of weeks?
Something that was probably hyped more than it actually ended up being was Coinbase launching their venture fund initiative. So, this news came out that Coinbase was going to be making a major announcement from CNBC Fast Money. A major announcement, and so everyone was like, "What are they going to list? Is it going to be? It's going to be Ripple? Is it going to be BitConnect back from the dead? What's it going to be?" Anyway. So this major announcement actually turned out to be that Coinbase was launching a venture fund.
What was it, a $15 million fund or something?
Yeah, $15 million fund. So, it's approximately about 60 times smaller than the EOS venture capital fund.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice that they're
giving a little bit of money out to people.
Because, they said in their blog post, we'll be providing financing to promising early-stage companies that have the teams and ideas that can move the space forward in a positive, meaningful way. Aside from the fact that this is a tiny fund, what kind of problems do you think will be pretty useful for moving the space forward?
User experience.
I think we can just end the show there. That is such a good point. I mean, user experience... I'm seeing mobile.
Yep.
You've got speed of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one thing. I've been seeing more and more people when you tell people crypto is about being your own bank. Now, for some of us, that's super exciting. It's like, yes, I am the maker of my own destiny. If I lose my keys, I'm an idiot, and that's all my money gone. But some people are legitimately afraid.
Dude, I'm legitimately afraid of being my own bank.
That's a fair point.
It's daunting. Doesn't mean it's not good, but it's daunting, man. With your bank, if something goes wrong at the moment, you can call them up and be like, "Look, I did something stupid. I must have, I must have left. Someone got a hold of my PIN. I don't know how they did it, but can I have my money back?" And then they call up the Federal Reserve and say, "We need a bit more money." And the Federal Reserve says, "Okay, here you go," and then you get your money back. With crypto, that's not how it works.
So potentially there's space for, crypto banks where sort of they take maybe insure some of the deposits or some nonsense.
I saw a really interesting take on this.
Yeah.
And it was actually by a bloke who's here in Brisbane that's starting his own company. And the product is called Safewords. And what he is proposing to do is to have a hardware wallet, right? But there's going to be 3 different key phrases that associate with your private key. So you can only unlock your private key with 2 of those 3 phrases. And the idea is that you keep one yourself, you give one to someone else that you really trust. So I don't know, your dad or something, and say, "Dad, can you keep this safe?" And then you put the third in a safety deposit box, or you store it with a bank. And that way what it does is it kind of it distributes your attack surface, and it means that if you you want to access the money, and this would be more like your savings, you need to have 2 of those 3 safe words. And so you might memorize it yourself, so there's no issue. You've memorized your safe words yourself, you're able to do your day-to-day stuff. But if someone else wanted to get that, they would have to not only find your safe word, but also find someone else's that's holding onto it for you, which is a really, really interesting idea. And I think that's how we might see things go in the future, maybe with these banks, that they're not holding everything, but they become custodians of a certain portion. But
Law firms would open up.
That's right.
Make a nice little buck or two.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it'd be a new way that people could possibly do stuff. But we'll link Safewords in the show notes, because I think that's the kind of thing that Coinbase may end up focusing on, is those kind of projects that solve those really big issues that people seem to have with using and storing crypto. But seriously, user experience. Someone seriously needs to do something about that.
So true. Next bit of news. Now, for those who aren't in Australia, we'll keep this brief just so it doesn't get too boring for you. There are some new anti-money laundering rules which are now in place for exchanges. And basically, they've got to meet some new counter-terrorism, anti-money laundering programs. They've got to maintain their records for 7 years and identify and verify users and report any suspicious behavior and transactions involving more than $7,700 worth of transactions. So kind of a big deal, which means you can't just cash out so easily as you used to be able to up until recently. What do you reckon on that?
Mate, this is expected, but it's really disappointing. I mean, we've been using Living Room of Satoshi for a while. A lot of people have been using it. What kind of struck me the most about this was looking at their Facebook page after this happened and just seeing all the people, or Twitter, and they tried to put in a really positive spin. They were like, guys, like, this is just going to make the aim of this is to make the country more secure. We've got to comply with it. It's the law. They tried to make it as upbeat as possible, but all the comments were like, sorry, we can't use your platform anymore. We've loved what you're doing, but this is the exact opposite of what you were set up to do, which is really true. But at the end of the day, they're not the ones with the guns. The government's the ones with the guns, and you've got to do what the government says. I think there is some silver linings though, and I think we're going to see this in other countries as well, as if they crack down. I think they're unwittingly contributing to people moving over to decentralized exchanges.
Wow, very good point.
Because at the moment, Living Room Satoshi, as much as we love it, it's centralized.
And that's just for anyone who doesn't know, it's an exchange where you can exchange your crypto for fiat money, US dollar, Australian dollars in this case. So contributing to decentralized exchanges, wow. Yeah,
so for those of you guys who don't know, decentralized exchange is basically what it sounds like. It's an exchange where you have a system that facilitates the transactions, but no one holds any records, and the transactions occur just between the two parties on chain.
Wow.
So it means that there's nowhere that all that data is being stored. There's no point of attack. There's no one reporting back to someone. And I think you're going to see that as these clampdowns happen, more and more people are going to move over to that kind of model to try and minimize the ability for people just to look in. It doesn't solve the issue of cashing out. That's the one problem. But I'm sure someone's going to come up with some creative way to cash out in some different manner.
Whack-a-mole, isn't it?
But look, mate, it's disappointing as an Australian. Like, we're here in Australia, it's disappointing to see that this is the tack the government's taking. I'm just honestly wondering how long it's going to be until they put a ban on proof of sale technology without some kind of know your customer requirements. Because with what Travel by Bit are doing here in Australia, where you can go to a lot of stores now and just pay with crypto. I mean, that's potentially another way that people could quote unquote cash out and potentially launder their money to get around these requirements. So it's very, very backwards, and I think it's a very, very negative action by the government, and I'm not a big fan. A little bit of entertainment from this week. One of the founders of Ethereum, his name's Vitalik Buterin, and he's kind of like this. He was this like teenage prodigy. He's now about 24, so he's grown up a little bit more, and he's incredible to listen to speak. Like, if you want to just listen to someone that is just smarter than everyone else,
I've never heard him before.
Listen to Vitalik Buterin.
Wow. Yeah, because he's like 24 or something, isn't he?
Never heard of who before?
Oh no, I've never heard him speak before.
Oh right. No, he's very, very smart. Very, very smart dude. But anyway, he was scheduled to speak at an Ethereum conference in South Korea. And I think his talk was meant to be on, the roadmap for Ethereum in the next 12 months or something. And he got up there and instead just kind of stood there and had a more general chat about Ethereum. And it turned into like him essentially saying what a lot of people have been thinking but never thought they'd hear out of like the founder of Ethereum himself.
Yeah, he said, if you want to build a decentralized Uber and Lyft on top of an unscalable Ethereum, you are screwed. Full stop. Because, Ethereum, 15 transactions a second, Uber, 12 rides a second or something like that.
Yeah.
You just, and add the crypto kitties on top of that, you got no chance.
No, you don't. You don't. But it's just so funny hearing that from the founder, because I feel like the rest of the community skirts around this a lot. The fact that like Ethereum's big Achilles heel is it's just so damn slow. Like it's slow and it's clunky.
He must be frustrated by that as anything.
Well, that's what he said. He said, look, developers must be so frustrated. It's like if you're trying to develop for this stuff and you come to the technology as it is now, it must be so frustrating to have to work with it. And he was quite real about the fact that that's not good enough. And while the scaling, there are scaling technologies in the works, they're not here yet. So that was quite entertaining. I mean, it's just a nice reality check from him, that essentially saying that things aren't good enough, they need to improve, and I guess maybe give a wake-up call to everyone else that that's what they need to be working on.
So it's nice to hear he's talking about, all these different scaling solutions, which is something they desperately need to do with that much. With that, first... It wasn't build it and they'll come. It was they came and then they need to build it.
That's right. And we'll talk about Ethereum a fair bit more in the Enterprise Blockchain later on. And I think that's probably in the back of his mind too, that like a lot of businesses are now wanting to get involved in this. And if they don't move quick, they're going to go somewhere else. You've got EOS talking about 10,000 transactions per second. With a better architecture than Ethereum has. Now, whether that turns out to be the case is we'll wait to see. But if it does, if it even performs half as well as Dan Larimer is saying it might,
it's going to be phenomenal.
It'll be phenomenal, and it'll be a lot better than Ethereum right now. It may not be as decentralized, but if you're an enterprise, you'll take that hit if it means that you can get everything else.
Checking the price of EOS. Oh, and there's another piece that came in. Thanks to JC for sharing this in our Slack.
Yeah, shout out to JC. He actually he just drops in every now and then and shares some great stuff.
He walks in, drops a link, and then just mic drops out of there. He's a good chap.
Yeah.
So I mean, coming out of the Bloomberg article, it's George Soros called cryptocurrencies a bubble in January. Now his $26 billion family office is planning to trade digital assets, and he's picked. Neither of us can read the market, and we're not trying to give you any kind of financial advice here.
Yeah.
It hit a massive high in January.
Yeah.
And things are pretty low. From what I'd see, you'd almost call it not a bottom, but I mean, it's no one can time a market perfectly, but I mean, it seems like...
Well, look at this. This looks like that excitement curve. It looks like the Gartner hype cycle. We're kind of hitting that point where everything kind of settles out, and then things start going back up again. If you look at that, hashtag not investment advice.
So the chap who runs the fund got permission from the head honchos, and so they'll be looking at trading cryptocurrencies.
For those of you not in Australia, we sorry to keep sharing Australian news, but we had a really funny moment happen last week. Our biggest bank, apart from the Reserve Bank of Australia, had an outage of like 5 or 6 hours, I think it was. And within that time, a whole bunch of loans. Joseph's appreciating the whiskey that we're drinking.
I may have just taken 2 sips worth and just sat it there for a half a minute.
That was a lovely, very content look on your face, mate. So this bank called the Commonwealth Bank had this outage for like 5 or 6 hours, and all these loans were erased. People's credit histories with the bank were erased. There were all these horrible things that happened, and they had to rush off to like some secure offsite backup and do a whole bunch of file recovery to get the system back online. But while it was offline, no one could use, or a lot of people couldn't use their cards. They couldn't transact in any way. A whole bunch of different transactions kind of ground to a halt because the bank system went down.
We had a mate who we know. We spoke to him, just saw the headline, went and spoke to him. He's like, "Oh, I'm debt free. I'm debt free,"
and he was for about 5 or 6 hours.
But and he was like, "Oh, what if it's gone forever?" I was like, "Bruh, they've got backups because they're not. Trust me, they're not wiping your money away.
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing." But as you said, it just goes to show why relying on a centralized authority to host all the data, it's a really big issue. It doesn't matter if it's an Australian bank.
Yeah.
It just shows that having a single source is just a bit of a...
Yeah, well, it is. It's a massive weak point. I mean, I tweeted out, like, the moment I saw the news, I had this big smile on my face, and I was just... I think you came in into my office, and I was just I looked so happy.
I was like, don't say it, and you just blurted up, blockchain.
This wouldn't have happened on the blockchain. No. But that's what I tweeted out, because it's so true, you know. Nothing that these banks build that isn't based on blockchain tech can stand up to what a simple blockchain can do. I mean, these guys have spent millions and millions of dollars on these systems, and a free open source blockchain works better.
So come on, Commonwealth Bank, come and join us in the future.
That's right.
We'll have a cup of tea ready for you. The kettle's been boiled.
All right, mate. Last story, and this is a little bit related to the anti-money laundering stuff we were talking about before. What's going on in Malta?
So, coming out of Cointelegraph, Malta have said that they want to become the blockchain island. Now, for those who aren't aware, Malta, beautiful island, crystal clear waters, lovely if you're going snorkeling, good tourist destination in Europe.
So Malta have essentially just announced a number of legislative changes to their framework that is going to make them a lot more friendly to blockchain companies and cryptocurrencies in general. One of their pieces of legislation is actually called the Virtual Currency Bill, and it seems to specifically focus on ICOs. And its goal seems to be to welcome as many ICOs as it possibly can to come and start up there by having a very loose, enlightened, forward-thinking, kind of free market regulatory framework. I haven't dug into the nuts and bolts of a lot of these bills, but from the bits I've seen of the bills so far, it seems like they're trying to make themselves as attractive as possible to blockchain companies to come. And from what I read, it seems like the regulators, so the people that are actually enforcing this stuff, are actually going to be kind of like helping these companies to get set up and established and work within their framework, which you might think that happens. You know, you might think that makes sense, which it kind of does. You know, if you've got a government that's meant to be for the people, and your regulators are meant to help people keep the regulations, it would make sense that they'd be, you know, pretty helpful in helping you get set up. But what actually happens in practice is normally the regulators don't really know what they want to do. Yeah. And to be honest, they normally don't really want to lift any fingers to do more than they have to. And that normally the first thing that means is that they don't want to help. So if you're a company and you want to start a business, for example, here in Australia, and you call ASIC, which is like the organisation that the government regulator that regulates all the companies, and you call them and you say, I want to start a business, they'll say, well, what are you calling us for? And you'll say, well, you're the regulator, like we pay you, you know, we pay taxes, like you should help us. And I'll say, no. We just take you to court if you do the wrong thing. And you say, well, what's the wrong thing? And they say, well, I mean, we're not going to... We won't tell you. You're going to have to go see a lawyer and ask them what the wrong thing is. Okay, so I've got to go pay and see a lawyer to make sure that I don't get in trouble with you, the regulator. Yeah, that's right. And that seems to be the attitude that most government regulators have. It's very much, we set the regulations and we just enforce them.
Hands off.
If you do the wrong thing...
Except for punishing.
That's right. And look, sometimes new legislation comes in and they don't even know what the right thing is. But heaven forbid if you just... forge on ahead doing what you think is right based on the legislation and they change their mind down the track and say actually what you did was wrong, they'll normally prosecute you for that with no leniency whatsoever. So that's the model that's in most of the countries, and what Malta seems to be doing is saying, look, if you want to come here, we'll actually send someone to your business and help you get everything in shape, and if you do that, you may not even have to jump through half the hoops we've got set up for certain people because you might already be compliant. And the big news that this has kind of been coupled with is that Binance, like the biggest current cryptocurrency exchange, is moving to Malta,
which is super exciting. Oh my days! So in this piece, it's saying that Binance wants to offer fiat to cryptocurrency deposits, so regular money to cryptocurrency deposits and withdrawals, which will improve its liquidity and open their platform to new investors entering the space. Like, this is really exciting because It's saying, it will improve its liquidity, aka loads more money is going to move into Binance, which means it reduces a lot of issues on trading because there's more money floating around.
Yep.
This is huge.
Yeah, so Binance have actually released like a roadmap for their move into Malta. And for those of you guys that don't know, Binance, I think prior to this was set up in Japan. I think that's where they kind of headquartered themselves after they had to get out of China. It was either Japan or Singapore, but I think it may have been Japan. And that was because Japan had a pretty forward-thinking blockchain regulatory approach as well. But Malta has, it seems like they've actively like sat down in their little parliament and gone, what do we got to do? Like, what do we got to do to get as many blockchain companies to come here? Like, we want to be a part of this revolution. And they've essentially gone from that to build their regulatory framework, which is opposite to what everyone else has done. Everyone else is going, how can we fit our current regulatory framework to catch as much of this stuff as we possibly can and make as much money from it as we possibly can?
So it sounds like we're going to see Gibraltar, which is where a lot of the online casino services are. It sounds like those two islands are going to start competing.
Yeah.
Who can get the most ICOs there?
Yeah, it's just funny that it's like either current British protectorates or former British colonies.
The Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
The Virgin Islands.
That's right,
ridiculous.
mate. They seem to have a pretty enlightened approach to this kind of stuff.
It's super exciting that they're opening up all this regulation. They're making it very clear through their bills. They've got the Digital Innovation Authority bill, the Technology Arrangements and Service Providers bill, the Virtual Currencies bill that you mentioned. A mixture of all of these things, and it's making it very attractive, which is great news for Malta and Maltese property owners. And
that's the thing. Like, these guys, while they're making it as easy for people to come in, there is still going to be some kind of tax. I mean, there's still a government. So there's still going to be some kind of tax. But by making it easy, by making well thought out, smart regulation, they're positioning themselves to be set up as like a blockchain powerhouse, essentially, as a very friendly regulatory environment. They're going to reap the benefits of that. And countries should be paying attention to this stuff.
Look at the brand recognition they're getting from this.
That's right. I mean, they've got the biggest exchange. Literally, they've changed a few laws and the biggest exchange has moved there.
Wow.
And that's how big this stuff is. People are looking for somewhere where they can go and build it. And countries that take the other approach and just try and tax people to the hilt, create barriers, set up problems, they're the ones that this next revolution they're going to flee. They're not going to base themselves there anymore, and they'll get left behind.
It's a lesson. It's a real lesson.
Yeah, it is. So each episode, we're trying to do a little bit more on privacy and security, simply because, first of all, cryptocurrencies are money, and they're quite valuable, and they're also digital. And they're not protected by a lot of the protections we've become used to as people that use the internet for the everyday. And so it's a really good thing to be aware of. What strategies you can take to make yourself more secure, how you can become more private in what you do online and leave a lot less of a footprint and make yourself less of a target. So we're really trying every week just to highlight something within that space. And a lot of it we're teaching ourselves about at the moment too, which is cool. So we're reporting back as we're doing things. So, mate, what have you been looking at these last couple of weeks?
Do you know what? I came across this video, which I'd watched a few years before. It was in my YouTube favorites, and it's from 2012 from DEF CON, which is a big hacking conference that happens in Vegas every year. Now, the title of the video is Steal Everything, Kill Everyone, Cause Total Financial Ruin. Now, it's by this dude who is paid by night to, he's got a day job working in computer security, but by night he's actually paid to test people's security. And he's a social engineer. So it's all about how vulnerable we are to people walking into our office with a clipboard, looking official, with a fake email on their iPad to convince you they should be there, and just how easy it is for him to get past defenses. Now, it's a 40-minute video, I think it is, but absolutely phenomenal. He shows you videos of him just walking around offices, taking things, walking into the kitchen of a 5-star hotel. All of these incredible security lapses just because other people are not to be trusted.
Wow.
And it's absolutely fascinating. So worth checking it out. And it's a masterclass on how these social engineers will do things, but also in the same way, you have to know how they operate to know how you're vulnerable. Because honestly, if you're not conned by someone, you don't see how it works.
Yeah.
So it sort of saves you getting totally, screwed by people just like that.
So he's just trying to let people know that this stuff is actually going on.
Yeah.
Does he talk at all about how to, apart from just letting them inside your office, does he talk at all about how to combat it?
Yeah, he does. So he mentions it's all sort of a running theme throughout it, but it's things like, some people will have doors that say keep this door shut, and someone props it open to get the breeze through. Things like that are big lapses. Or other things, you can walk through an office. I can guarantee you pick a random office in London, walk into that office, you can see on Post-it notes on the screen people's passwords.
Jeez.
I mean, I saw a photo that was on the internet that was just of someone's computer, and it had Post-it note on the side, and you can see their password, and that's on the internet.
What's the point of having a password?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, fascinating video, really worth watching. Just watching someone actually committing social engineering, and he's paid to do it.
Wow.
Fascinating. He's good humour as well.
Wow.
And he shows some cat memes as well, so it's good fun.
And look, on that, waking us up to all the different security issues in our society, that seems to have actually been a pretty big trend the last couple of weeks, looking at the media. I mean, this whole Cambridge Analytica thing that's gone on with Facebook, and people finding out that their data's been used in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of situations, which honestly was quite surprising to me, because I thought everyone knew that Facebook knew everything about them. I mean, but it seems like people are starting to wake up to the fact that these big companies that hold a lot of data may not have their best interest at heart, and may be out just to make money from their data, as opposed to just being good custodians of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're not already using some browser extensions or a privacy browser, there are a number of extensions that you can install. There's uBlock Origin, there's AdBlock Plus,
Privacy Badger
from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Lots of really useful plugins out there. Worth getting involved in that. There's always HTTPS. I can see you've got that on this computer. Some really important things, because every web page on the internet where there's a like button from Facebook, they know you're there. And there are more pages than just that. I know for a fact there's, because you can embed an invisible pixel that tells Facebook everyone who goes on there, and then they can see that you're there, and they can use that to develop stuff based on your interests.
And with Google, it's even worse, isn't it? Because your portal, our portal to the internet has become so much about accessing everything through Google that Google can track us pretty much all over the web, because most sites now have some form of AdWords or something from Google within it, or their servers might call Google.
Plus, if you're using Google Chrome, there are some potential issues with that.
Oh, there's some big issues with that. Even anything based on Chrome. I know that Brave, which I think we might have mentioned here before, Brave, their architecture is based on Chrome, and it came out recently that some of what's going on behind the scenes with Brave is still calling home to Google and still reporting to Google because it's based on Chrome. So there's a lot of that going on, and it's really worth taking a note of, and it's really worth starting to think of how you can make some strategies to de-Facebook or de-Google your life. So that's going to be we're going to focus on that a little bit going forward, as well as our general privacy and security stuff. But one thing that we have been using is Protonmail. Which is actually where our show address is at.
So what is Protonmail? What's that all about?
Yeah, so Protonmail is essentially an encrypted email service. So what it does is each time you open your browser, you can open a new tab and go to Protonmail, and you can log into your Protonmail account from that browser portal. But it essentially encrypts all your traffic going in, and then encrypts all your traffic going out. So when you first sign up for an account, you sign up to your email address, and then you get a set of keys. So you get public and private keys, and there's a level of encryption you can choose. And it essentially means that your email traffic and all your activities inside that email browser can't be monitored. No one's monitoring them. Even Protonmail, who runs everything,
they're based in Switzerland.
They're based in Switzerland, yeah. So and they're very, very privacy focused in all their media. But even they can't see a lot of what goes on inside your own email, because it's all encrypted with your own keys. They do have recovery procedures, but it's a lot harder for them just to peek in, like Google can just peek in. And you'll notice when you're using Gmail or Outlook or any third-party email provider, they will serve you ads literally based on the emails that you're sending and you're receiving, and they're essentially watching everything you write. And if you're sending email from Protonmail account to Protonmail account, you can actually have the whole thing encrypted, so nothing within that traffic really can be decrypted unless you have the keys, and you're sending that as like a signature to your with your email address. So it's really, really good. I've been using it now for probably 6 to 9 months, Protonmail, and I've got some not just my own email address set up in there, but I've been able to set up other website addresses in there. So from domains I've brought, you can do everything you can normally do with other email providers within Protonmail, I've found, and it's just a lot more peace of mind. I barely use my Gmail or Microsoft accounts now except for spam.
Excellent. Protonmail. So you can check that out at protonmail.com.
We haven't had much contact from our regular guests. Dan, the ICO man, has gone very quiet. I'm a little bit concerned he might be laying low from prosecution from a couple of state governments. Jordan is, mate, ever since we got that call from him in Vladivostok, we just have not heard from him.
Yeah, he goes for the long-term pranks, doesn't he?
Yeah, I'm not concerned yet. Yeah. I'm not concerned yet. But look, we couldn't leave the episode without at least one guest. So we're going to drop in on a conversation that I had recently with a guy by the name of Larry from the Somerset region in Britain. And Larry called in essentially wanting to discuss his view on Bitcoin. So we'll drop in and have a bit of a listen to that.
All right, Matt. All you just wanted to say, Bitcoin ain't gonna last. You see, these things come and go, you see. I remember, it must have been about 20 years ago now, one of the young whippersnappers was talking about this new thing called electronic mail. Right? Can you believe it? I said to him at the time, I said, George, it's just like the last thing for LSD tripping hippies to get excited about. You can't send mail along the telephone lines. I'm flat out getting calls along the telephone lines, it'll never take off. And it ain't. The Royal Mail still comes up my driveway every day, stops in for a quick cup of tea, delivers me mail. Can you get that with electronic mail? No, you can. And that's why it's never taken off. These Bitcoins would be exactly the same, wouldn't it?
So what about, Larry, you said that this car comes up your driveway. There was a time when horse and carts were the way that things were transported.
Look, my grandfather said to me at the time, he said, look, there's always going to be a job for horses after the motor vehicle came along, right? And there were. He ain't wrong, my grandfather, and I ain't wrong like he ain't wrong. I mean, think about how many horse races there are. There are loads of them. Loads of them, and then you're telling me there's going to be nothing for horses to do when cars come out. You're talking crazy talk to me, mate.
Okay, so Larry, you must have seen emails somewhere, though. Everyone has email addresses everywhere. Power, like your power bill, you can't even get your power bill mailed to you most of the time anymore. They want to email it to you.
Look, I ain't received a power bill for at least since 2012. So don't come telling me that email is going to change the world. I ain't received nothing.
So, Larry, you must have heard of these things called credit cards then. Have you used one of those?
Look, since I joined this financial system, mate, I've been using it. Look, the Royal Mint don't make these coins for no one to use them, do they? I don't credit, I don't card, I don't nothing. I take the money out of my wallet and I pay them directly.
So you pay for everything in cash?
Yeah, and if you got an address, I'll post it to you, won't I?
All right, well, tell me this then, Larry. What you buy right now, like you go down to the store, you pay $1 bob for a loaf of bread. How much did a loaf of bread cost you 30 years ago?
Look, they weren't even using pound coin back then. That was when it was on a whole different system, weren't it? So why would it matter the difference in the price between then? It was 3p back then, but 3p are different now, isn't it? What, is it shillings or a farthing, something like that? I don't know. I still got farthings, though. They're pretty good coins.
So you have to pay a lot more for your bread now than you did 30 years ago?
Right, I've got a big 1p collection, but that's not the point, innit?
Can we at least agree that your money is worth less now than it was 30 years ago?
No, I got more money than I had 30 years ago, didn't I?
Yeah, but everything costs you more as well, Larry.
Are you being thick?
No, Larry, I'm trying to explain to you why Bitcoin is the future of money.
That you're coming over to me telling me that inflation is making my money worth less. Inflation obviously means it's inflated, doesn't it? So, of course, with inflation, I've got more money. I don't think it's that hard for someone to understand.
Larry, thank you for your time. A very, very refreshing view on just the general state of things. We'll try and discuss Bitcoin at another juncture.
No worries, mate. My dad always said I was a quick learner, and I ain't let him down yet. Except obviously when he died and I had to lower him into his grave.
Enterprise Blockchain, Joe. Talk to me.
So businesses are putting huge amounts of money. There's a huge amount of interest in the blockchain and how it can transform business. So a lot of them are putting big budgets into it. So this week we're talking about what are they doing? What might they be trying to work on, and how can we benefit from that?
Yeah, position ourselves to be involved in that somehow.
Precisely.
Yeah, look, and it goes back to essentially you look back at anything. You look back at any kind of technological evolution or invention or whatever. Firstly, it was normally the military or one part of society, but very soon you see businesses, and especially large businesses like the enterprises, come in and look to harness that technology, because where there is a potential for evolution, there's a potential for more profits or to get ahead of your competitor. So it makes sense that as this blockchain stuff has matured and people have started to realize the potential, that the increasingly big driving force behind it would be business and enterprise. So when we say enterprise, we essentially just mean business.
So what is one of the big things that businesses need when they approach blockchain, especially big businesses?
Yeah, there's a few things, and the main things you really need is operability, reliability, and standards by which to run everything on and cooperate with everything else in the space. And the reality is business has certain needs that the public blockchains we know may not or can't cater for. And that is why we're starting to hear this term enterprise blockchain. It's simply because enterprises looking at the blockchain sphere and saying, we like what they're doing, but we might need to shift it a bit, change it a bit so it suits our needs. So why would enterprise need blockchain?
Do you know, ultimately, a lot of this stuff takes money to develop. And as great as open source is, there aren't necessarily at the moment, well, there is a growing community around that, but the funding to get stuff built is really what's needed, because developers got to pay their bills. Yeah,
and look, developers can get paid really well in a lot of other places at the moment. I mean, it's not like there's a huge amount of developers getting around. There's a lot of people seeking jobs. It's generally that a lot of people are seeking developers, and developers can pick and choose what they want to do more and more. But the benefits of this stuff has become really apparent for business really quickly. And there's a quote I saw recently from Martin Vidler, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Active Ticketing PLC. And he says that the ticketing industry is crying out for security and a mutable state with regards to ticket distribution to mitigate the growing nefarious agents that operate in this space. He goes on to say blockchain, focused and applied in the right way, has massive benefits to both artists and consumers. And that seems to be generally echoed all around the industry. A lot of businesses are looking at this and they're going, this distributed ledger technology allows us to take trust out of a lot of our daily transactional lives, out of a lot of areas where we have to trust other parties. And instead we can trust the maths. And if we can build the systems around trusting the maths and putting it in a distributed ledger that's immutable and very hard to attack, it's going to mean so many benefits for everyone, consumer and business. So, mate, talk to us a bit about specifically Enterprise Ethereum, because I think that's the furthest along. When you look at what has the most momentum behind it, maybe in line with Hyperledger as well, but Enterprise Ethereum seems to be the one where there's a big push.
So a lot of the core parts of Ethereum make up this public Ethereum, but there are things that businesses need that the core part of Ethereum doesn't cover. Things like, permissioning, making sure that, your new employees, you want to give them some access to do stuff, but you don't want to give them the keys to the castle. So you've got things like that, management systems, even like off-chain trusted execution, especially between large enterprises. That's something that's something that's being asked for. And then private consensus, so just the banks can sort of have systems between themselves, for example, or insurance companies, and even sort of what happens if the encryption on which Ethereum is built breaks. Businesses are sort of are asking, what can we do in case this encryption is not right? How do we switch to something else?
Yeah.
And that's there are a few different areas that, Enterprise is looking to tackle. What are the big ones from your perspective?
So I think some of the big ones from my perspective is the off-chain solutions, the private transactions. I think there's a lot of nervousness around the enterprise community that this public ledger stuff, there's really good benefits, but it also means that everything's out there in the open.
Right.
And if someone figures out that account X, Y, and Z are a certain company's accounts and they're doing all their transactions from that account, it wouldn't be too hard for them to then follow the transactions and work out where all the money's going, and they could potentially indirectly give away certain secrets or certain trade practices or whatever. And so a lot of the enterprises are saying, look, we love some of the features of this stuff, but we also want some privacy. We want to be able to transact in a more private way with certain other stakeholders or certain other companies, and they're looking to side chains or off-chain solutions to do that. And there's a lot of stuff as well that enterprises have built that they want to be able to work with the blockchain. They don't want to necessarily have to migrate everything onto the blockchain. They just want to be able to tie a lot of it to the blockchain, build certain solutions on top of it, but still be able to have all their own proprietary software running off on the sidelines and not having to port all that over to the blockchain as well. So essentially what companies want is flexibility. They want the benefits of the decentralization without necessarily having everything out in the open. So, mate, what enterprise projects are out there at the moment?
So there are a number of different projects out there. Hyperledger is backed by the Linux Foundation, so it's a big open source movement which covers a lot of the different areas on that. You've also got Corda by an organization called R3. You've got Quorum, which is being looked at by JP Morgan. You've got the Quorum project, or is that?
I think it's Quantum. I think that's how they want it to be pronounced.
Quantum. And then you've got Microsoft are working on building a lot stuff within their Azure cloud services platform. And then you've got IBM Blockchain, which for running on IBM systems, I believe. Yeah,
and they're doing a lot of Hyperledger stuff too, I think. And we'll just run through a couple of specific ones. The first one, which caught my eye actually only a couple of days ago because it's only recently kind of come out, is what's called Hyperledger Sawtooth by Intel. And up to this stage, Intel had stayed relatively quiet in relation to blockchain, but it seems like they'd been working on this Sawtooth project based on the Hyperledger fabric themselves. And what it's designed to do is essentially integrate with other Hyperledger products. And they want to tackle some very specific use cases which they see business needing. So they want to tackle on-chain governance, for example. They want to build a product for on-chain governments which can use smart contracts to vote on different ways to configure the blockchain and allow a lot of people to participate using smart contracts in different ways.
Right. What other sort of things does Hyperledger Sawtooth cover? Yeah,
so they're looking at advanced transaction execution. So they want to be able to process transactions in parallel.
Wow.
So at the moment with Ethereum, you can only process transaction in series. You can one after another, like essentially about 15 transactions per second. What Intel are looking at, and they've developed the core tech with this Sawtooth, is being able to process transactions in parallel with essentially a bunch of side chains all tied to Ethereum.
And this has got sort of support for Ethereum from the outset?
Yeah, Ethereum, and I think I'm pretty sure they're developing it for other blockchains as well. So I don't think it's just Ethereum, but so much is happening on Ethereum at the moment that's where a lot of the efforts are being focused. But the one thing that really piqued my interest with this Sawtooth stuff is that they are looking to be very, very flexible in the way they're running their platform. So they want to be able to have what's called dynamic consensus, which means that if your organization is a small organization, it might make sense for you to have everyone involved in all the decisions. Mm-hmm. But then let's say you get to 20 people and you say, well, that's not really appropriate anymore. We need to split the decision making up. And we need to have some people that don't make many decisions and some people that make more decisions. Well, instead of having to redevelop all your technology in your decentralized organization or whatever to deal with that, you can just swap the consensus protocols out using this Hyperledger stuff. So you can say, well, this model actually works better. I'm just going to swap that one in, and bam, it's done, which is really, really interesting. Or if you need better scaling with your internal transactions, and the Ethereum algorithm has been working for you, but actually the Dash or whatever other project algorithm may work better for you, then you can upgrade or swap that
hot swapping bits
on the fly. And their other focus too is that they really want a lot of different people to be able to program this stuff.
Right.
So they want people to be able to program smart contracts in their language of choice. So whether that be Go, JavaScript, Python, C++, or any of the other major players, they're trying to offer support for as many people as possible.
Wow. So I guess to sum that sort of stuff up, Hyperledger they describe it as a modular platform for building, deploying, and running distributed ledgers.
Yeah, but look, it's really interesting to see that these big companies are identifying the use cases that are needed for big business, and then they're developing this tech, which, let's be honest, like a lot of the blockchain world have been trying to develop for a long time in an open source manner. But it's just incredible to see how quickly things can get done when it's business backing it. It's a big company like Intel paying all the money for it. They've moved pretty quick on this stuff, and it's really interesting to see.
So the next big project is Corda by an organisation called R3. Now, R3's got a big team. I think it's 160-odd people, which is not insignificant. And they say that they've got a growing global ecosystem, which comprises of more than 200 companies and regulators on 6 continents. And they say it makes it one of the largest collaborations of its kind in the blockchain space. Now, they're working on Corda, which is an open source blockchain project designed for business from the start. They say that it lets you build interoperable blockchain networks that can transact in strict privacy. So they've got smart contract technology. So some interesting sort of stuff in there. There's a bunch of information on their website, but there are more than 60 big companies you would have heard of involved. They've got partners including Accenture, so a big consulting firm. You've got HP, Intel are involved as well, Microsoft. So
it's a huge list.
So yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of these businesses are sort of saying, look, we want to get, Microsoft don't want to sort of put all their eggs in one basket. I think they've probably learned that in the past. They're sort of putting a few fingers in a few pies, because we honestly don't know who's going to have a seat when the music stops. So really interesting project. A bunch of stuff in there, use cases for a number of large industries. So yeah, that's an interesting one as well that's out there.
So the next one is Quorum, which is, funnily enough, done by JP Morgan, which I feel like, mate, only about 6 months ago we were quoting
Jamie Dimon.
We were quoting Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan saying that Bitcoin is a fraud and that will never ever amount to anything. And then here we are 6 months later, and they've got an enterprise-ready distributed ledger and smart contract platform, which is free to use out in the wild.
Wow. You kind of think there must have been some JP Morgan executive who is working on this Quorum project, seeing Jamie Dimon make a fool of himself, and then Yeah.
Yeah, because they can't have just been working on this the last 6 months. Like, if you go into this website and you look through their platform, it's quite clear they've been working on this for a fair while. And essentially what it says is that Quorum is an enterprise-focused version of Ethereum. So it's based on Ethereum. It's kind of like a fork of Ethereum, I guess. And what they say is that Quorum is ideal for any application requiring high speed and high throughput processing of private transactions within a permission group of known participants. And they say it addresses the specific challenges to blockchain technology adoption within the financial industry and beyond. So it seems very targeted towards the financial industry in particular.
And they do say, like, one of their core points is that they want high throughput and like high performance. So it's for institutional transaction volume. So massive. It sounds like a big deal.
Yeah. And look, this is where you're starting to see the co-opting of a lot of the public stuff. It's quite clear looking through the Quorum documentation that they've taken all the bits from Ethereum that they've liked, but they've said, we now can develop something that's very specific for our use case. And that seems to be what they're doing.
What I'm finding most fascinating about this whole thing is these are big companies saying this is open source.
Yep.
Now, to my logic, companies going with open source just doesn't seem to click with the current economic model.
Yep.
But, you know, JP Morgan on the site, they're saying, look, open source code, it's inviting collaboration and hoping it gets, stronger and better. They've got, it's under the same sort of license as Ethereum. So kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is a little bit weird. I got to admit, mate, when I saw that it was free to use, I did a double take and I had to actually look a little bit further just to check that they were serious about it. But I think what we're seeing is that companies are learning that open source doesn't mean less secure or worse. I think that's how we associate it a lot of the time, simply because that's what it used to mean, really. But what the blockchain has taught us is that having a lot of people work on something and work to try and hack things and break things and add bits to it actually makes a better system. And if you open it up, so if you say everyone can use it and can work on it, it not only makes it better for them, but it makes it better for you, because you're essentially getting free development on your platform. Quorum is always going to be JP Morgan's platform, and they're going to be the ones that, at least for now, know how to use it the best. So any development that other people want to do on it can only really benefit them because they're the ones implementing it with their customer base, which is huge. So it's really, really interesting just to see that there's that mindset shift there between how it used to be and where everything was kept really close to their chest and how it is now.
It's beautiful. Absolutely amazing to see.
It's really, really good.
So Microsoft, they run this sort of cloud platform, Microsoft Azure or Azure, I don't know how it's pronounced. And so you can like rent server space, and there's a bunch, like hundreds of things, like different solutions that they offer. It's similar to sort of Amazon's web services, and then Google have their Firebase and all their cloud computing, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Microsoft have their version, and they're doing a huge amount of stuff on the blockchain. You've been really excited about this recently. You've been doing looking into this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Tell us what you come across.
Yeah, so I first heard an interview with Marley Gray on the Software Engineering Daily podcast, I think it's called. We'll put a link in the show notes to that. And he's the head of Azure Blockchain. Wow. So Microsoft have made a whole department in their web services specifically for blockchain. And the more I heard from this guy and the more I just heard about what they were doing, the more I had to dig deep. So I've spent probably the last few days just knee deep in all of their technical documents and really trying to get a good idea of what they're doing. And man, I've got to admit, I'm really, really excited. Just seeing what Microsoft are doing and how much they've bought into this blockchain stuff. And very similar to what you were talking about with JP Morgan, how eager they are to open source all this stuff as well. Right. It's unreal, and it's just so cool to see. So, and look, the other thing that got me about Marley Gray too is that apart from everything else, he had a really good explanation of why enterprise blockchain makes sense. And he said, imagine if you have like all of the world's information in one place, like it's in a library. Okay, right. Just one library.
Okay, I can imagine that.
Let's call it the Library of Alexandria because it's funny. And the problem with having it all in one place is that if you put all your knowledge there, it's easy if someone gets control of that library for them to change things in the library, to pull pages out of books and put another page in saying something completely different. Say it.
Google. Continue. Sorry. Sorry. Don't let me interrupt.
Joe had to get it out.
I was on the verge of twitching.
You should just in Joe's face. You were really in distress there for a little bit.
Sorry, you were saying, so if you've got the Library of Alexandria and it's all in one place and one guardian controlling it,
you have to trust the guardian who's controlling it. And you have to trust that they're always going to do the right thing. And if someone puts a book in that library about how terrible the guardian is and how they really smell and they're not a very nice person.
Lots of nasty things.
And they treat all the other library employees like crap. You have to trust that librarian is honourable enough and self-critical enough to leave that book sitting there in the shelf. So anyone can come along
responsibility.
And open up a book and see just how bad that librarian is. And, I mean, we all know that human nature would mean that the librarian, the first thing they'll do once that book's been placed there is go and either take that book or they'll change parts in the book and make it to talk about how good the librarian is.
Because not all librarians are like Ron Paul.
That's right.
Sorry. Anyway, I don't need to get political.
But, or if, let's say, someone else controls the library and they decide they want to burn it down, they burn it down, that's all the world's knowledge gone if it's in one place. Now... And he said, look, okay, so that didn't work. And so we started putting our knowledge in a bunch of different places, a bunch of different libraries. And eventually, humanity moved on. We made the internet, and it was meant to be like a big decentralized thing. But we've still got that problem of information centralization. Even if we've got several servers that host all the information, it's still held up really within just a few different providers. And we just have to trust that they're doing the right thing and that information isn't being changed or tampered with. The thing with blockchain is that you can have the exact copy of the blockchain anywhere in the world. So you can have that Library of Alexandria all over the world. And if you have a librarian that comes and takes a book out of that library, all the other libraries can instantly know, hang on, that's being tampered with. We're going to cut that library out or we're going to correct the error. Or they won't even be able to pull the book out, because the record is tamper-proof.
So how did he tie this into Enterprise and what that means for Enterprise?
Yeah, so he said for Enterprise, at the moment, the problem is probably the worst with Enterprise because a lot of Enterprise just have their own servers. And it's kind of like this big gold mine just sitting there. And I mean, we've seen it with hack after hack after hack. These enterprises have these huge information treasure troves just sitting there, and it's not really spread out. It's not distributed. But the blockchain, you can spread it all out while you maintain security through cryptography and trustlessness. And that makes sense for business. If you can do that, if you go to a business owner and you say, you don't need to worry about your servers anymore, we are going to make it so that your information can't be attacked because it's distributed. And also, you don't even need to trust where we store it because it's secured by maths, and you don't have to trust anyone else to store it for you either. The business owner is going to go, wow, sign me up, that's great. I get to get rid of all my whole bunch of overheads that I've currently got with server security and maintenance and all sorts of things like that. But I no longer need to trust that whoever's storing my data, if it's off-site, is storing it securely because there's algorithms in there, there's hashes, there's all sorts of things that can tie that information to all the other bits of information. And that was really interesting, Matt. And I've never heard of it put like that before, but it was really good to hear.
So that sounds super keen. What are Microsoft doing, and where's their focus? What sort of things are they bringing into the game? Yeah,
so Microsoft, like me, they seem to be very excited about smart contracts, and they're focusing on using on-chain and off-chain solutions to make smart contract platforms that work really well and can fit a lot of enterprise use cases. That seems to be their focus. They're saying this smart contract stuff, which is going to be built on the blockchain, is dynamite, and we need to make it as easy for businesses to build that and deploy it as efficiently as possible as soon as we can. And so they've come up with this concept of cryptlets. And what a cryptlet essentially is a small piece of code that's bidirectional. So it can touch the cloud, where a lot of the data and programs and APIs and all sorts of things are now, like in our internet as we know it. But it also, at the same time, can touch the blockchain. And the idea is for these little pieces of code, these cryptlets, to be plug and play into smart contract. And they say it best themselves. It says Microsoft and other third parties will offer cryptlet libraries that expose functionality that's both horizontal and vertical in nature. For example, as a consumer of cryptlets, you may browse the cryptlet libraries in the tool of your choice looking for a cryptlet to provide notification services that awaken your smart contract based on some kind of event. Wow. You may also want additional functionality from this service, like providing market prices when the smart contract wakes up. Wow. Once you find that cryptlet, the cryptlet that does that thing that you're interested in using, you can simply make a reference to that cryptlet and use it to subscribe to a notification service, providing it with what you want to be awakened and what data you want when you're notified. Wow. The cryptlet infrastructure will test the security, authenticity, and reliability of the service and data provided, along with digital signatures for the cryptlet and the attested host for the audit. Now, that's a whole bunch of technical terms, but what it essentially means is that you can get a piece of code that is verified trustworthy, because that's the big challenge at the moment, is getting these oracles, they call them, which can kind of come in from outside the blockchain and provide information. So Microsoft's saying, we're going to provide an additional framework where we're going to have these trusted programs that can provide information from the cloud into the blockchain. Wow. And all you need to do is write a couple of lines of code to get that information in, and you can then have, when something happens outside, you know, like let's say it's a code based on the sale of a digital album, okay? And the moment someone clicks buy on that digital album and pays the $5 or the equivalent in Ethereum, that cryptlet will report. So it will first of all acknowledge that buy's been processed, and then it will report that back to the smart contract that it's associated with, and that smart contract will say, okay, there's been a purchase. Now 50% of that, so wake the contract up, and what does the contract say? Well, it says that 50% of that purchase price is to go to the artist, and 50% of that purchase price is to go to the platform. Do it. And it'll execute. So you'll be able to see, first of all, that the cryptlet reported the sale was made, the money came in, and it was sent 50-50 to the two parties. And that's kind of the idea of it. So it's kind of like that bridge between the outside world and the blockchain.
Wow. That's super huge.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, that final sentence from that release is just, that's key. It says, the cryptlet infrastructure will attest to the security, authenticity, and reliability of the service and data provided. That is huge. Like, that's such a big deal.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's probably the first thing that attackers will try and poke to death to see if they can find flaws in.
Yep.
I'd be really interested to find out more about that. That's really keen.
Look, if you've got the time and you're at all technically minded, it's really worth a read. We'll put some of the links in the show notes to their documentation. Right. I haven't been this excited in a while, just looking at what someone's building. I think Microsoft really get it.
And you can see, because, I mean, Microsoft has this massive suite. Now, their share price is, where it is. It's not, seeing growth like, some of these tiny companies. Yeah. But they've got a solid suite of products. And, knowing, having used some of their, random bits, remember Visio from back in the day. I mean, they still have it. You could, build flowcharts and cool things like that. And random things like that. You just think, imagine if you can just start building, drag and... It feels like... Blockcat are looking at this. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Microsoft are looking to sort of plug that into a lot of their business stuff. Yeah, they've got their Dynamics 365, so for customer relationship management stuff, being able to take your customer data, plug that into other parts of your cloud system, and transact. Oh, mate, it's so exciting. I mean, good on them for just going with it.
Yeah, and look, I think that from what I've gleaned from all their media and what they've been saying, and even just looking at what they're building, it seems like they're really making a big effort to try and integrate this stuff as much as possible into existing workflows. Just to say to businesses, look, we understand you can't be fully decentralized straight away. You can't just put everything on the blockchain. So let's work out how we can start that process. let's just get you beginning to do that stuff, and let's make it as easy as possible for you to do it. And that seems to be the approach they're taking, and it seems like they're building their smart contracts infrastructure to accommodate that, to say you don't need to have it all. You can just start building these contracts and they can make calls to other parts of your workflow, other parts of your stuff. And I think it's a really good approach.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting.
Clearly some great minds have been thinking about these problems for years on end now. It's not just someone had that idea in his bath. There's a lot of thought that's gone into this.
Yeah. So that's Microsoft Azure Blockchain.
Then we got some sort of organisation. So Matt was discussing Consenys earlier, who we went to to a talk done by David Highland Wood.
Yeah,
really fascinating talk on standards. We'll get onto the standards part shortly. Consenys is one of these big organisations. Consenys with a SYS at the end. Massive company. I think it's like 600 plus staff. They're constantly they're hiring hundreds of developers at the moment. I mean, they
can't get developers quick enough.
Oh, they're hiring DevOps engineers around the world. You can work from home. You can work in your underwear, sitting at home. I mean,
so I met a bloke called Sam. Pospy, I think his online handle is. Shout out to you, mate, if you're listening. And he lives up north at one of the coasts,
right.
And he said, mate, he works for Consenys. He said, it's great. I live 20 minutes from the beach, 20 minutes from the rainforest. I remote in for all my dev work.
Wow.
I come to Brisbane whenever I need to.
That's amazing. And they're doing a lot of consulting. So businesses are saying, we want to get on this stuff.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
And then they got hundreds of people at you. They got project managers, they got QA engineers, like quality assurance people. They've got developers, and they've got if you hired Consenys, you'd have some brilliant brains dissecting your problem, making your business more efficient than you ever wanted it to be. Really fascinating stuff. So they're a business that they're pushing a number of different areas, both consulting with businesses, working on standards, which we'll get onto shortly, but really interesting sort of company there.
Yeah. And look, hooking in with that, there's this organization called the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and it's a big player in this space. And a lot of what we've talked about, in fact, pretty much all we've talked about previously, all those companies are members of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And their focus is on partnering with a lot of the existing enterprise in the tech world and saying, let's build this thing out. Let's come to a set of standards. Let's make it as easy as possible for all of us to play in this sandbox and to move everything forward. And so they're the ones that are working with a lot of different governments on regulations, and they're working on different types of papers, and they've got different working groups, and their goal seems to essentially be to make it as frictionless as possible for businesses to work together.
But yeah, so there, while this is super exciting, there are a bunch of challenges with this as well. What's the first big challenge that we can see?
I think the first big challenge is that you've got, while we talk about Enterprise Ethereum Alliance and standards and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, it seems like a lot of these companies are trying to do the same thing. And they're trying to do the same thing in different ways, using different blockchain architectures, different governance protocols, different approaches, different programming languages. And the problem at the moment is that a lot of that stuff it just doesn't talk to each other. There's still a lot of work being done on, and I think it'll get there. Cross-blockchain communication will get there. A lot of the other interoperability will get there. But eventually all this stuff has to connect. And I think a big challenge is going to be kind of pulling this all together and making it all connect with the different technologies that are being developed. So that's one challenge I see. Another thing is the standards.
You're exactly right. I mean, you've got all these companies. Now, I guess it's okay that we don't all work on the same thing. But yeah, you've got Hyperledger, you've got the Corda platform, you've got JP Morgan's Quorum, and you wonder sort of what's going to win there, because there are a few different ones out there. But I guess this is almost like the Blu-ray versus HD DVD that we talked about the other week. Like, it's really sort of, we'll see what wins through, but it kind of means you have to look at all of them until someone finally wins when the dust settles.
Yeah, it's almost created another political like scaling kind of debate between that, because at the moment, like, we've always focused on like, oh, Bitcoin versus Ethereum versus Dash versus EOS versus whatever else, but there's a whole nother conflict brewing, and that's between like Hyperledger versus Microsoft Azure versus Corda versus Quorum. You know, like, I think it's going to be just as essential for businesses to work out not just what blockchain architecture they're going to use, but whose platform they're going to spin up on top of it.
And even at the meetup we were at the other day, there was one of the dudes at the end, he was saying, look, one of the other big things we've got with blockchain tech is what block producing algorithm do we use? And I mean, that's another big one that's going to be, you know, we're going to see something totally different to what's currently there now in 10 years.
Because we've already covered a few, haven't we? We've covered proof of work, proof of stake. So just to put names to each of them, proof of work for Bitcoin, proof of stake for PivX, delegated proof of stake, which is like EOS, and Byzantine fault tolerance, delegated Byzantine fault tolerance.
That's NEM?
Which is Neo.
Yeah. And then you've got, what is it?
Proof of existence.
Proof of existence. And then there's like proof of space time or something like that, which is the... that storage one? I think storage.
I think IBM have one, a new one coming out as well.
I mean, it's like that's
proof of intelligence or something. I don't know.
It's ridiculous. Like, so there's going to be a whole nother argument there, but we'll save that for another episode. You know, will the last block producing thing please stand up? So,
mate, if you're an enterprise then and you're looking at this and you're going, okay, this is overwhelming. I don't even know where to begin on this stuff. What's an answer? What's some way that we can bring all this together and agree in some kind of manner on how things are done?
So that would be standards. That's where standards come together. Now, if you're not familiar with what standards are, you know, you'll have seen. For everything that's possibly around you in the world, there is a standard for it. There's a standard for, you know, you'll often see ISO and then a bunch of numbers. There's like an ISO numbers for a credit card. So there's actually a uniform standard for the sizes of credit cards. There's ISO standards for how you wire your electrical sockets, how you manufacture your glass, how the angles of stairs, how to build for disabilities and accessibility and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Every possible thing, how you store your data, everything, there is a standard.
Well, laws are a type of standard as well. Like the laws we all live by, that's a standard that you're expected to meet.
Yeah, exactly. So it's in the very early stages, and the talk that we went to the other day was by David Highland Wood of Consenys. I think we mentioned him earlier. But really fascinating. He was explaining how the standards are being developed. He was saying there are thousands of companies that are interested in this. Of those companies, you know, like one person from each is probably, looking at the standards. You know, so that gives you maybe 1,000 people around the world are looking at building these standards. Of those, you know, he's saying like, oh, maybe there are 5 or 10 people writing the standards, and then another sort of 50 people around that who are sort of commenting on it, debating, and then you've got sort of the rest of the people outside are either just watching or debating outside of that, but not necessarily contributing. So they're really hashing out a bunch of the big problems with this at the moment. You know, lots of different stakeholders, lots of different. You know, he was saying there are insurance companies who are big on this. You know, the pharmaceutical companies. You've got the big banks, and they've all got things that they're looking for here. So pharmaceutical companies, for example, is compliance is a big thing. You know, if you're writing text to go on the side of a bottle, of pills, that needs to go through legal, marketing, a million times before it gets approved. So they've got a different set of requirements. So the standards that they're building around this, they're still working on.
And look, the thing about standards is that once you can agree on like a common way to do stuff, it then lets everyone play on like an equal playing field. It means there's a better level of interoperability between those people, and it smooths over all of the rough edges. It kind of means that people can go, okay, well, this is the way we're going to do things. And the internet was a lot like this early on. There's a lot of parallels you can draw between how the internet was early on and how we are here. There are a whole bunch of different protocols. No one really knew what was going to win out, but then there were organizations that started to say, this is the way that we believe things can be done the best. And once people started using what they said people should be doing, it got a whole lot easier. And everything started talking to each other, and there are a lot of the problems that we had.
All singing from the same hymn sheet, I guess.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
A quick example of that is just HTML. So the structuring language of data, of information on the internet, is, it's built on a set of standards, and they're constantly, people are always making new suggestions, new little tweaks, things they don't like in the old ones they sort of want to get rid of. There are lots of discussions around that.
Yeah.
And you'll see things where they're saying, oh, we're proposing this for the new standards, and some people go ahead and just test it right away when no one supports it. But it's really interesting. It's the bleeding edge of where we're sort of moving towards. Really cool stuff. But it's a huge, as David was saying, it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
It's, getting thousands of people to agree.
I don't envy them at all. I mean, we even asked him a question. It was like, how are you going with this? He just kind of laughed.
I'm pretty sure, I don't know, it would have been recorded. I think the recording didn't work, but he said something like, it involves, you have to like beg, borrow, steal pretty much almost, and blackmail just to get things moving. I probably shouldn't have said that. Because
it's kind of like herding cats. Everyone has an outcome that they want, and you just so at the end of the day there has to be someone to just say, this is how we're going to do stuff. It might not be the absolute best way, but it's a way that we all just need to agree on so we can move on. We can get on with actually building stuff and stop talking about it and bickering about it and building 1,000 different things that all do the same thing. Because that's kind of what we're looking at right now. I mean, everything we've listed, there's so much redundancy and repeating of functionality. I don't think it's going to be until we really get to a standard that we'll start to see a lot more optimization and a lot more new stuff getting built.
Because it's a big risk jumping on early, but we'll get to that in a short while. So we've got the challenges that we've covered so far, the disparate tech, a bunch of different things out there, all sort of competing ideas, building standards around that. What are the other sort of problems we've got? Yeah,
so another challenge, we've kind of touched on it, there's just a large number of chains at the moment. Like, there's so many blockchain projects around at the moment, and blockchain projects on other blockchain projects too. I mean, Ethereum and all the different platforms being built on Ethereum is just one example of that. A lot of them are targeting enterprise too. It's not just Ethereum that's targeting enterprise. I know EOS are making a huge push to target enterprise. Neo, which we covered last time, they're very much keyed into making themselves a business chain. And this space is going to look very different in the next few years. We're still very early. We're still really working out what an ideal blockchain is going to do. And that's just another difficulty right now with this enterprise blockchain stuff, is that, like we were talking about before, it's overwhelming. Like, an enterprise is looking at this and going, well, I mean, crap, do I pick Ethereum? Because it may not be around in 5 years' time. Something else better might come out, and that may be better. And that's why I really love Microsoft's approach, just because they seem to be focusing as much on building stuff around the periphery that can play nice with anything, so that if a new blockchain platform comes out and it offers a whole new bunch of functionality, it's not going to be as hard then for someone to swap a lot of what they're doing over to that one. And I think that's where enterprise, at least the enterprise, if they were to ask me, I would be telling them to as much as possible not lock themselves into one blockchain, and try and work out how they're going to do things in the fringes. And how they're going to make it so that if something else comes up, they can pivot and they can adapt and they can shift. Wow. So that's another real challenge. I think, like, the sheer number of blockchains makes it really difficult for businesses to hone in on one and say that's what we're going with.
Wow.
And we talked about it earlier too. Sorry, we talked about it earlier too with Vitalik's comment on Ethereum. He was saying that this platform it's just not scaling at the moment. And we've got all this Enterprise Ethereum Alliance working on all this stuff, and we still can only process 15 transactions a second,
And he was like, good luck trying to build Uber on Ethereum. Microsoft's approach, where they were saying, look, let's just build things that can sort of plug and play with a few different things. That seems like quite a sensible bet.
Yep. Like, at the end of the day, you still need the blockchain. Like, that's the essential part in blockchain technology, is the blockchain. And so I think as much as we try and build things around the outside, we still need the blockchain for the core functionality. But I think there's things we're beginning to be able to do to mitigate some of the risk of locking yourself into one blockchain or another. Atomic swaps, side chains, off-chain transactions, all that kind of stuff is going to help.
And and then you've got the whole private chain thing, because I guess businesses are like, I don't want to be sharing all my stuff sticking it on a public chain, as you discussed earlier. But then you've got do people want exclusive blockchains just for them, as opposed to sharing with a bunch of other businesses? Or?
Yeah, and I think that then comes down to whether you need blockchain at all. Like if you're just a small business and you're saying we want complete privacy, we don't want to put anything we do on the blockchain. It's probably not as secure if you take that approach. If that's what you really want to do, but somehow you still want blockchain technology, my question to that business would be, well, are you sure you actually need blockchain? Because it probably makes more sense for you to just host your servers, because that's all you'll be doing. You'll just be hosting the blockchain on a few of your own private nodes, and if you've all got the same security vulnerability, and you've only got a fraction of the computing power that someone else may have, unless you're running some very specific algorithms, you're just as likely to be hacked, and you're just as likely to have issues, and you're probably creating more issues for yourself. But if you're a big enterprise that's worldwide, and you have a lot of different centers in a lot of different countries, it may make sense for you to host your own chain, because you could theoretically have 200 nodes, and each city has its own set of nodes, and that might actually be a really, really secure way for you to run your business and get all the benefits of a public blockchain while on a private chain. And that's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see a lot of conversation around that. A lot of businesses are starting to say, well, we've got a lot of computers. Why can't we just run our own chain and get the benefits of both? The issue with that, of course, is when you start wanting to play with other businesses as well. Hey, and on from that too. Sorry, mate, I keep talking. The one issue with it, of course, is that if you've got all your own private blockchain within your company, and you come to another company and you want to make an agreement, that company has to trust you. And that's the whole reason we've got these public chains. So I think your use case is a lot more limited if you're running a purely private blockchain, because it would only be within the organization. And the moment you want to do anything that's facing outside, that's when you're going to run into issues, because like if someone like JP Morgan says, we're running our own private chain, come play on that one, someone else who's doing business with them is going to probably say, well, I'd just be more comfortable doing it on a public chain where I can see everything. So there's that to consider as well. But I think there's definitely some business reasons that make sense for private chains.
There is another question. If you live in the European Union, you've probably heard about the GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulations, something like that. General Data Protection Regulation. Now that's affecting all kinds of businesses, from Facebook through to even just small businesses who hold customer data. It affects a lot of sort of different businesses. If you're listening, do you have any ideas on how that will affect storing data on a blockchain? It could be nothing, but if you know anything about that, do hit us up at the FOMO Show.
So, mate, to wrap this all up, what are some of the direct, practical, rubber hits the road use cases for enterprise blockchains?
So there's a huge amount of stuff. There are a couple of different really useful lists out there. 30 of the big in fact, the big one for me personally, as someone who buys stocks and shares, every time I buy, I spend $15. Every time I sell, I spend $15. I pay $30. So I pay $15 to send a signal along my computer, along a wire, to another computer where they make a trade, no human intervention at all, with the exchanges, and then bring that, confirm that, and send that back to me. Now, a lot of technology like Robinhood is wiping out those fees. Now, those fees actually make it impossible for just the everyday person to be trading and making money trading, which restricts stock trading to just the wealthier people in society, unfortunately. While it won't directly, while it may well affect that, things like fund managers, cheap funds, where you got all the money in a pool, the blockchain can sort of control the bank accounts, and you say, okay, let's just balance this amongst the top companies in the FTSE 100 or whatever. It can use the tech to validate a lot of that stuff. So for funds, I think that could be huge.
Yeah, and it's all open as well, I guess that's the other thing too. The people can put their money in that fund and know that it's being managed properly, can see what's being done.
Minimal human intervention.
That's right, yeah.
There was a great piece on 30 non-financial use cases of blockchain tech. What were the big ones that sort of you've pulled out, you can sort of see in that list?
Yeah, so there's a few that stick out to me. Blockchain as a service is definitely one. I think that's going to be huge. If you're a software as a service company and you're anything at all interested in blockchain, I think this is where you need to be pivoting your company towards, or at least adding it to your suite of offerings. Compliance and security is another one. If you can create very specific standardized rules for compliance, and if you can then use the blockchain as security, it's going to make such a huge difference for businesses who spend literally millions and millions of dollars on compliance and security that could be performed using blockchain technology for next to nothing. Digital identity is another one, and Microsoft and a bunch of other companies talk about this a lot. If we can get identity to be secure, private, and digitized in a verifiable way, it's going to be really, really good in so many different ways, from protecting privacy. We talked about Facebook earlier, and that's going to really help, all the way to making it a lot easier for people to comply with Know Your Customer requirements without all the burden of holding all that data, because it's like we talked about before, honeypot. If you have all this customer data just sitting in your servers,
that's Equifax did,
that's liability. That's huge potential lawsuits. And if you can put all that on a blockchain and just tap it when you need it, that's going to be massive. What are some ones that stick out to you, mate?
I'm seeing like e-voting. That seems like a big one for me. The land registry as well. Now, I don't work on that side of things, but just having verifiable who owns which bit of land, and registering things via that, making transactions through that sort of makes a lot of sense. It would take a lot of paperwork out of it. Yeah, even just like basic property, real estate records, that'd be, and supply chain management. I guess is a big one that sticks out.
Yeah,
we were talking about Walmart last episode.
I think it was a couple of episodes ago.
Talking about what they were doing there. Fascinating.
Yeah, look, I think supply chain is one of a lot of people use it as their big example of what this can do for enterprise, because if you can make all of the components in your supply chain blockchain enabled, and you can say have a package start at a store and track it using a blockchain enabled chip through every single stage of the supply chain, when it arrives to the customer can just automatically, like, they can log into that entry on the ledger and see all the places it's been and verify that it's come from where it needs to come from. And I mean, even something as simple as I was talking to my wife yesterday, and we were talking about a company that they have rescue homes in a Southeast Asian country, and they rescue girls from prostitution and essentially help them kind of put their life back together after they've been sex trafficked as children. And this company gets them to make really high quality jeans. So that's how they pay their wages, pay for the rescue home, and pay for more girls to come in. They have this company, I think they're called JC Jeans, and they have like a little, I'm pretty sure they have like a little sticker on it just to say this is where it's come from. You're buying a set of JC Denim, that's what they're called, and you're buying a set of jeans that's been made by a former child sex slave, and we're rehabilitating them, and something like that. If you could put a small blockchain chip in there instead, and you could see that it's come from the production floor there in Cambodia or wherever it is, and it's come all the way to your hands, and you can verify that it hasn't gone via any other route.
Mm-hmm.
It means that, you know, as a customer, it adds that extra level of trust. You can even build a smart contract behind that to say whenever that pair of jeans is bought, you know, automatically send a certain amount of money to the home and, you know, wherever else. So yeah, I think not for profits, especially, I think are going to benefit from a lot of this
transparency
stuff with their
donations
transparency. If you're a not for profit in this space, this should be where you're heading towards, because it's not only good from a donor side, but it's amazing from a compliance side, because it just lets you show without a doubt where money has gone.
So what absolutely fascinates me about this whole thing, and David mentioned it in his talk, and we hear it over and over again, it's just like how fresh this stuff is. I mean, we are in the Wild West.
Yep.
We're seeing, you know, we're seeing traditional industry try and sort of like step into this, but how this plays out in practice is going to be fascinating. Is it, you know, are we going to have in our blockchain that's specifically for supply chain, you know, so tracking things from and to, so that you can like verify stuff on, like how these things are going to play out in practice?
Yeah,
is super interesting. I mean, I haven't even got the faintest idea about where it's going.
Yeah, It's honestly really hard, like looking at it right now, trying to work out where it is going to go. Because in one sense, I get like, and I use it a lot, the analogy that it's kind of like the second coming of the internet. But at the same time, a lot of what the blockchain does, the internet already does to an extent. But I think the big key is, if you're an enterprise and you're looking at the blockchain, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. You have to ask yourself, do I have something that's outward facing, first of all? So am I interacting with other parties in some way that requires trust? And if the answer to that is yes, I think blockchain's definitely for you. I think it just makes so much more sense, because you can eliminate a lot of that trust, and you can be a lot more transparent. The second thing to ask is, am I holding any confidential data, or am I storing things that if they were hacked or if they were breached would cause me to have significant amounts of liability? I think if the answer to that question is yes as well, then blockchain's definitely for you. I think the other one to look at too is automation. You know, if there's areas that can be automated, and that's outward facing, or that's even if that's internally facing, but there are still elements of trust or parts where things are being stored, blockchain makes sense for you there as well.
You've also got to ask, am I ready to move really fast? Because things are going to move really fast for a few years, and you've got to almost have the resources there to be able to sponsor that.
Yeah.
And it's going to move.
It is going to move. And I think, like, as a counterpoint to that, I think the other question you got to ask yourself is, am I ready to be left behind? You know, because it will move really fast, but the people that get on this stuff and really own it, I talk about embracing disruption a lot, and I think that's kind of where it's at. It's going to be a lot more beneficial to at least have some skin in the game than to have none at all and just to watch it fly past you.
Well, there was a quote from a futurist back in the day, Alvin Toffler. He wrote, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I feel that we're definitely going to be doing that with the blockchain. I mean, it would have happened with the internet. You know, new things come out the whole time. You got to reverse some things back and push other things forward, and you have to be ready to sort of just go with it. So
yeah, because mate, if you want to sign an agreement in 10 years' time and it doesn't have some form of trustless blockchain smart contract element to it, people are going to go, "What are you hiding? Like, why should I trust you when we can eliminate most of the trust by building a smart agreement that just enforces the terms for us based on maths?"
Like people selling cars without, roadworthy certificates.
Yeah. Yeah, in 5 years' time, they're going to go, "Why can't I see where this car has been, and why doesn't it have a blockchain entry?" So,
that's a very fair point.
Yeah.
We just won't trust each other. No one needs to.
We won't need to. That's that's the whole point of it.
It's kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah.
But pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we've got a listener question from Richie Rich BTC, who posted it via our Slack channel. Thanks for the question, Richie. Richie asked, how could teams best market and gain exposure for their project while still maintaining their credibility? It seems really difficult to do, especially in the current market. That's a pretty big question. It's a pretty hard question, I guess, because from a marketing perspective, you got trust is one element, and maintaining credibility and trust while simultaneously supposedly shilling is quite a weird one. I guess what I would say is being very, very genuine. They have to be. I mean, a lot of the top YouTubers were just being themselves on camera.
I think you've got to... The whole thing with this blockchain community is that it's built on openness. The reason we wanted distributed ledgers is so they were open ledgers and people could see what was going on. And I think you have to apply the same mentality to your product or your company if you're coming into this space, especially if you're asking for money. You have to apply the same mentality to that as you're applying to the blockchain itself. And I've seen some companies do it really well. I think there's a few companies out there that have very regular audits. They open up, they make sure that everything is done on a blockchain, like on a ledger, so people can see what's happening. And to be frank, I think the best thing you could possibly do is to build the product first. If you can either build the product just between the core development team without asking for any funding, or if you have to get a bit of private funding to at least build the product and then give that private funder some incentive when it comes to like a token generation event, I think that's the way to go, because people need to see that there's something tangible. And a lot of the scamminess that's come into this space has been where people have just slapped together a website, put some pictures up, and just run with that, And I actually, looking back on one, it's a shame it really didn't get funded, but we featured Kexcoin in, I would think it was episode 3 of the podcast, one of the first episodes, and that was something that Chris Coney, who's from the Cryptoverse, was involved in. And while it didn't get funded, which was, a real shame, I really liked the way they ran their campaign. They had a lot of video content. They had regular updates from all the creators. You knew where the company was based. It was registered in a country, and you could see all the people, and they were quite clearly all there on the camera. And they were very open about everything they were doing. And it was actually involving real physical, tangible assets as well. And I think that's at least for me, that's what I look at in a
100%.
project.
Those are some fantastic points. I think I'd just add to that from the marketing perspective. We'll get onto the trust point that you mentioned in a second, but first thing I would say from a marketing perspective is everybody needs all of these projects, and you see a lot of these coins don't have on their homepage just a one sentence, and in an absolute nutshell, what is it? Are you a smart contract company for pet shops? Are you as opposed to saying the future of portability or whatever they say,
the future of smart contracts,
scale at speed and things like that. If you can say in a nutshell succinctly what you do, you got your elevator pitch. If people used to put that on their homepage, that is 100% as the big words, the first thing I see. So I've got what you do. You pique my curiosity. I'm not curious by seeing sort of a random long description or even just vague terms. A very specific qualifier. That's one thing.
Because this is a crowded space, and you've got like 5, maybe 10 seconds
100%
to get across what you do, or they're clicking away.
Because people are going through CoinMarketCap, going through the top coins, opening their websites, and then close. That's basically how it's going. That part is number one. Secondly, simplicity. Keep everything really simple. I mean, if you're using big things and complicated terms, put a diagram in, because I'm not going to understand it. Imagery every few hundred words, so I can actually see what I'm trying to understand here. Even your white paper needs to be relatively easy to understand. And if you're doing, if you've built some code for it and you're open sourcing it, at least have some comments so people can sort of know where to go when they're looking around the code. And for the non-technical people who are looking to invest in your project, explain what you're building, why that's important,
Yeah.
and where we've got to so far, and
Yeah.
still what's there to be built.
Yeah.
Because that's the transparency part. So what Matt was saying about trust, having people who are there, like what Kexcoin did, having an actual people as opposed to hiding behind random avatars and things like that. Actual people who can be verified via LinkedIn, things like that.
Yeah.
Great points. I think I'd 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Because that is trustworthiness.
That's
and
right.
Trust is kind of intangible, but there are measures we can do.
Yeah.
You know, some of that is social proof from other people talking about it, but still, it has to have that core stuff.
And it's in more limited supply now too, trust. Like at this time last year, people were throwing money. Like if you had something, if you had a web page and you had the word ICO in it and token generating event and you had like a pre-sale and then a sale.
Your founder could have been John Doe.
People, you would have made $5 million. Like it was just, that was the kind of environment that things were at. But frankly, a lot of them are either completely gone by the wayside or they're going to be in jail soon because they've completely breached securities law. So now it's very different, and people, their trust is in very limited supply because they've been burnt, and there's so much noise. You know, the signal to noise ratio is huge. So you need to cut through that. You need to give people reasons to trust you.
One final thing from the marketing thing. Come up with a few different images with some very small, brief points on them that people can share. And also, something that can be useful, if it's a project like a coin, put a comparison table with something that everyone can see.
Yep.
So you can see how yours goes head to head.
Yeah. If you know someone who might enjoy the podcast, please feel free to share it with your friends. You can either link them to our website, FOMO.show, or you can just get them to search for the FOMO show in their podcast app of choice or on YouTube. And please remember to tell them to press subscribe.
Yeah, if you see us on one of those platforms, that if you tried searching for us on a podcast platform and you haven't found us, let us know and we'll get that submitted there for you.
And also, if you like the podcast, we would really appreciate it if you left a review. If the platform does allow you to leave a review, that really helps us. The more reviews that we get on the show, the more likely it is to be put in some kind of promoted area on the platform, especially on iTunes. If you're an iTunes user, the reviews on there really do help.
You can find us at FOMO.show.
You can jump on our Slack at FOMO.show/Slack.
Follow us on Twitter at @the_FOMO_show.
You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thefomoshow.
And YouTube at FOMO.show/YouTube.
Well, that's it for us here at the FOMO Show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
If you like our show, please do feel free to subscribe in your podcast app of choice or via our YouTube channel. I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And as always, remember,
No FOMO. Yeah, because there is like a close relationship. I just didn't really know. I don't know any. They don't teach us about. There are too many countries we've taken over, mate. Right. There's not enough time in history lessons.
You were supposed to be the newsreader. You were supposed to bring balance to the blockchain.
So, mate, 7.9% of Americans have purchased crypto.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Look, you can't commit money laundering if you're surrounded by red tape. I'm sorry. Well, all
unless you make the red tape, of course. Then you can launder all you want.
It's a lovely time. I can't remember where I was hearing that. I think it was on like Fry and Laurie. It was like, it's a lovely time to be manufacturing red tape. So what's been going on this week in the news?
I don't know, mate. I haven't looked at anything.
Oh, fair enough. Right, crisp packet colours are all wrong in this country. Right, so I moved from Britain, where I'm used to the great British packet of chips. I mean, packet of crisps, we call them, as your chips, as we call them here. Blue crisps, should be...
Original.
No, that should be cheese and onion. Red is ready salted. Green is salt and vinegar. Pink is prawn cocktail.
Prawn cocktail?
Yeah, bro.
Yuck.
Sorry, I don't think you've had prawn cocktail.
Oh.
Walker's prawn cocktail crisps. Oh, just the business. But
you guys have got it all wrong because
Oh yeah.
pink is salt and vinegar.
All right.
Green is chicken.
What?
Green is chicken.
Yeah.
Blue is original.
Interesting.
What are some other colours? Red is tomato.
Tomato
Or
crisps.
barbecue. Yeah. We
Why
used
would you-
to have a brand
Tomato
called Sam.
crisps?
We used to have a brand called Samboy.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think they're around anymore.
Right.
But they used to have atomic tomato.
Wow.
And
What's that? Tomato and paprika or something?
No, it was just like intense tomato. They used to give you like this extra flavour sachet and you could like pull it out.
Wow.
Salt and vinegar, same thing. You could like pull it out and you got extra salt and vinegar sachet.
Whew.
But that made sense because red was tomato.
I guess it does make sense if
Brown
tomato
is
crisps
barbecue.
Brown is barbecue. I think brown is the same for both countries.
Okay.
Or it's like brown or black.
So we've
I
got
think
some
is
common
barbecue.
ground.
Oh wait, hold on. No, brown is smoky bacon. I think in the UK. Oh no, that's like a maroony. It's just weird. It's like if you're listening, what are the main crisp packets colours in your country? Send us a tweet.
That's what we want your feedback on.
Yeah, yeah. Have your say. We should run a radio show. Oh, we've got Ben calling in from North Ipswich.
Yeah, I'm just calling in for that crazy Brit you got on your show, mate. Chicken is green, all right? I don't care what you pommies do over the ditch. Chicken is green.
Thanks for joining us, Ben. We're going to cut your line.
But to me,
Yeah.
whenever I think of chicken, anything produced, it should be green.
Okay, so that crisp Matt is gesturing to a green packet of crisps
Chips.
and chips in whichever language you decide to speak in. Now, that specific colour should be sour cream and onion, which, of course, we both agree on when it comes to Pringles.
Sour cream and onion is yellow.
Hold on. Where is some common ground between our very different countries?
I think barbecue. Probably the common ground. Okay,
Yeah.
if you've got a chicken salt shaker
That's not... Oh,
in the UK,
yeah.
what colour would it be?
Do you know what? Chicken salt is one of the rarest things in the UK. You have to
Really?
actually go out of your way to find. It will just be 2 inches of shelf space in a massive supermarket.
Dude, but chicken salt's the best. Like if you want to have, if you
Oh,
want to
it
have some, like,
is.
fish
I've
and
never
chips,
had the best chips.
You
as
get
when
chicken
there's-
salt.
The fish and chip shops will sometimes put it on. More often than not, they won't because they don't even know what it is. But I will agree with you. They make chips the business.
If you've never had chicken salt on your chips or your French fries or whatever you call them from wherever you're from, wedges, whatever. Next time you're at a fish and chip store, ask them for chicken salt on the chips.
It's going to change your life.
On the hot chips. It's just so good.
And then the next level up from that is adding mayonnaise. As in dipping mayonnaise. I can see some questions.
Like aioli or like just mayonnaise?
Just mayonnaise.
Nah, man. No.
Agree to disagree. Fair enough. It's arguments.
Aioli.
It's
I can say
arguments like
aioli.
that keep the mayonnaise price reasonable. Because if there was demand from you as well as me, mayonnaise would just be through the roof.
Yeah,
Supply and demand.
that's right. That's the free market economy at work.
Just don't buy mayonnaise, anyone. Oh wait, hold on. Then that would reduce the
Then no one will make mayonnaise anymore.
economics. This
But-
is horrific.
Can we agree? Garlic aioli mayonnaise is better than normal mayonnaise.
Do you know what? I've only had aioli maybe 7 times in my life now. I've had it, 3 of the times you were probably there. So I'm pretty uncultured when it comes to that. And like Walker's Crisps.
On the next
No.
episode of Chips Talk,
I reckon we should just have a little 2-minute segment in every show.
Chip Chat.
Chip chat. Yes.
Chip
Chip chat with Matt and Joe. Or crisp chit chat. Wait, chip chat.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. It's another Chip Chat with Matt and Joe.